See it on YouTube later if you need it. Liver. You know you love the liver. It is giant, super old gland. Like, it is old. Like, it does crazy stuff. Like, if you lose part of it, it can regenerate, right? It controls all of this, all of these components and functions in the body. It filters, it manufactures, it repurposes. It's a busy old gland. Okay, it's the vagus nerve of the glands. It's large. It weighs a couple of pounds on a good day. It secretes bile, which we'll look at, which we can use for digestion. We actually reabsorb a lot of it too. So there's 4 parts to know. There's a right part, there's a left part, there's the quadrate and the caudate at the end. You might remember that the liver looks like it's kind of cut in half by this white line. That's a ligament. It is the falciform ligament. It kind of holds it in place, really. There's a round ligament also, which we'll look at, and that's part of your old umbilical vein, which is kind of neat because it's that important and that key. It's early important. From the bottom, it's kind of squarish, and it looks like it's got a gallbladder that it's sitting on top of. Okay, caudate, think tail lobe. That's why it's posterior, okay? Caudal. The hilum or the hilum, whichever you want to say, like hilum, is this opening between the quadrate and the caudate lobes, which we'll look at in just a minute on the image. We're going to have this hepatic portal vein. So remember, we have a lot of blood flow that's coming through here. It's coming in from the stomach, or not the stomach, but really the intestines. We're filtering, we're taking in things, we're pushing it back. So it has, remember, of course, unique blood flow. So the hepatic portal vein and the hepatic artery. There's going to be a point where we collect and exit the bile, which we'll look at, and that's going to go to the gallbladder, which is like a holding tank, really, for the most part. It's always it's always green in the images, and it actually kind of just attaches to the diaphragm, right? It looks like this. Okay, so vena cava coming through over here. Right lobe, left lobe, the falciform ligament coming down the center. So gallbladder down here, the green component right here. Bile duct, which is going to take the bile back into the digestive tract. This is why it's an accessory organ. Right. Round ligament down here at the bottom, which we talked about, used to be the umbilical cord. Kind of neat. Okay. It's a big, cool organ. Okay. Let's talk about the microscopic anatomy. Oops, maybe there it is here. There's these things called the lobules when we look at it. Okay, let me just go to it and then come back. Okay, here's the lobules, because they're lobes, right? There's going to be a central vein, right, that's going to go through here, and you'll notice that kind of looks like there's these little pizza slices, kind of triangular. It's almost like the kidney with the pyramids, right? Coming down and then meeting at this component right here in the central vein. Okay. So let me go back real quick. All right. So these little cylinders, and there's a central vein that's going down the middle, and then around it are what we call hepatocytes. Like hepato is liver. Like that's how you know we're talking about a liver. Is hepato is involved in it. Okay. They're cuboidal cells, which means they are secreting stuff and they're absorbing stuff. They're busy with the things inside of them, which is why they're round and puffy. And so they're only like a couple of cells thick themselves. So they're kind of small. So there's a lot of it. There you go. Kind of coming back, right? So they have a lot of contact surface area with the venous vasculature. Okay. So there's a lot of vein in the liver. That's the primary contact surface. All right. So hepatocytes. So after you eat, the hepatocytes are going to have that initial blood draw, right? It's not going to go all the way through your heart and then come down to your liver. Your blood's going to get pulled out from your intestinal tract, and it's going to actually kind of pass through the venous system in your liver, and we're going to pull out sugar, protein, ions, all of this stuff. And the liver has so many functions, it's going to decide what to do with all of them. And it's going to also be a bit of a monitor of what you ate and kind of help get the body ready for what's coming. Okay, so there's that. You've heard of like a fatty liver, or the liver also actually stores glycogen, which is our long-term storage molecule for sugars. Okay, instead of starch, we have, glycogen. And so that helps regulate blood sugar back into the blood because it's got that front line monitoring system of what you just ate. So it knows what to provide back to the body and kind of keep going. It's a filtering organ. Your medications get partially processed here for sure. Hormones, old hormones, parts of blood as well, right? Bile starts coming in. Pigment just means that it becomes yellow. That's what that means for the most part. It's going to push out a lot of different components into the blood. Some of them, like albumin, are going to help kind of almost pH or buffer the blood, really. Lipoproteins, they're like part proteins, part fat. We talked about clotting factors way at the beginning of the semester. Precursors like angiotensinogen, a lot of other things. Okay. The way that it's able to kind of get everything in and out of the blood so quickly is it has a specific type of blood vessel that we talked about a long time ago, and we're going to go back to. It's a sinusoid. It means they have very large holes, so lots of stuff can pass through them, okay? So blood's connected in the central vein, and it's going to kind of push it back into the hepatic veins altogether. So it goes right into vena cava, but here's what the sinusoid looks like, okay? So this is the inside, and it doesn't look like it, but it is, because look at the red blood cells of like one of these little blood vessels, right? A sinusoid, look at the large fenestrations where those blue, with the purple nucleus cells, they look like fried eggs, right? Those are the epithelial of the inside lining of the blood vessel. But then there's these huge cracks and spaces in between them where you can see like these microvilli kind of sticking through. Those are called the fenestrations. They're cracks, they're holes, they're huge, right? And lots can pass through them. And lots can be pulled right back out. Okay, they really perfuse quite effectively. And so here's some of the hepatocytes right there. They're pulling in and pushing out whatever they're drawing in from the blood or whatever they need to put back into the blood. Okay, the liver is a filtering organ, and this is how a lot of that filtering action occurs. Those sinusoid cavities, it's like taking a sink sponge. Okay, it has high capacity for absorption and flow. All right, so the gallbladder is important because it holds and releases bile. Bile is going to be used to break down fats for the most part, okay? So it has a lot of salt in it, like we talk about bile salts for one thing. It's not that big, maybe like a decimeter long, right? Like maybe your hand's length, for example, depending on how big your hand is, I guess. It's got a lot of mucosa in there, a lot of columnar epithelium for secretion. The head of it is referred to as the fundus. The neck is the cervix, and that leads to the duct. Let's take a look at what that means. Okay, here it is. Think of this as being like right kind of embedded, like sort of bottom, but embedded into the liver right here, but the liver is removed. Okay, and it's going in right here to the duodenum. So that first part of the small intestine, tiny little tract. And it's going to meet here and kind of get secreted in through the duodenal papillae, which kind of rise up at the end of that duct. Okay. There's a lot of salt in bile, and we'll look at all of these places along, whether it's the cystic duct or the bile duct proper, where you can have gallstones get stuck, or they even just fill the gallbladder altogether and clog it up, right? So you need to have a gallbladder removed. You got a gallstones, you have too many. That would be why. Okay, too many salts in there. And they just compact down into rocks, essentially, okay? So the gallbladder is going to meet, so here's the head, the big round part, the neck, all the way up here in the body. It's going to push everything out through the cystic duct. It's going to mix with hepatic duct secretions, where they become the common hepatic duct, which means they join together. They secrete through the bile duct, where they meet again with the pancreas here. Okay, this is known as the hepatopancreatic ampulla. Hepato, liver. Pancreatic, pancreas, right? So that's what that's about. And they're going to secrete together into the duodenum. Okay, hopefully it's helpful. Okay. Bile is yellow to green. It's got a lot of fats in it. It's got phospholipids, things that make it yellow, essentially. That's what bile pigments are referring to. And acids as well as salts. The yellowish part is generally given to us by bilirubin, which is when we take hemoglobin and we break it down, you get bilirubin, which is why in jaundice with excessive hemolysis, we have that yellow tint, right, that shows up in the eyes or the skin. So that's what that's from, and that's why it's pigment for the most part. Bile acids or salts are going to come from the cholesterol altogether. And we talked about gallstones, for example, so heavily concentrated salt. So the first thing that happens is like bile is like drip dropped out into the gallbladder. Is that okay? That wasn't mine. Into the gallbladder from the liver. Okay, and then the liver is going to secrete like quite a bit of bile every day, and so it's kind of constantly kind of dropping it, dripping it into the duodenum. So 80% of your bile just kind of gets recycled all the time. So whether it's the acids or the salts or whatnot, it's not wasted. Okay, it's not always moved through. It's used for a small amount of time during the chemical digestion process in the first part of the small intestine, and then we take it right back up. Okay, it's referred to as enterohepatic circulation. So it's kind of secreting it out of the gallbladder through all the bile ducts and then taking it back up through the small intestine. So that's what that is. And it can actually circulate a couple times during the digestion of the meal. So like bile production kind of gets going. You lose about a fifth of the bile that you eject in your feces, which is one of the ways, but not the only way that it contributes to the brownish color. Okay. All right. Gallstones are biliary calculi. So biliary, think bile, okay? Calculi, think calculus, which means buildup, stony-like buildup, okay? So cholesterol, calcium carbonate, and bilirubin for the most part. Cholelithiasis is the presence of gallstone. It's usually found in folks that have too much cholesterol in their diet and salt for the most part. It's very painful. It can cause jaundice, poor fat digestion, unhealthy stools as well, and you can't absorb the fat-soluble vitamins that you might need. And so one of the treatments that's kind of interesting is they can use lithotripsy. So that is using sound waves actually to pulverize the stones or to shake them up and break them up. This used in a few different things, like also like in different types of stone, like oh gosh, what am I thinking of? Like bladder stones. Why can't I think of but right, other parts of your body. I think it's because it's like 8 o'clock at night and it's such a long lecture already. Yeah, pretty painful. The obstruction, I don't know about lithotripsy if that's painful, but here's like the picture, right? So here's what they look like. That's not, they come in varieties. I do know that. They come in different varieties. They all look very different. Right. So that's them. They kind of look like little bones to me. Yeah? Question?